back, everyone. This is part 2 of my Standing Liberty Quarter education presentation, design elements, and collector strategies. I hope you all enjoyed part 1 of this little series, the history behind this amazing and symbolic coin. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you do so. Coin collecting is about much more than just physically collecting. As a collector, you have to know what you're collecting. As far as coins go, you have to know what makes a coin valuable, what makes a coin rare, how does the coin wear down, and what are the high points to look for when determining a grade of a coin. And I can help answer some of these questions, and in this video, specifically featuring the Standing Liberty Quarter, stay tuned as I use examples from my own collection to help answer some of these questions. Briefly discussed in my last video, there are two major design varieties of the Standing Liberty Quarters, Type 1 and Type 2, but there's actually a third type coin in the Standing Liberty series that we will also be discussing shortly. Type 1 was only issued for 2 years, 1916 and 1917, and as you can see, this became known as the Naked Lady or the Booby Quarter, as Liberty's right breast is exposed on the original design of this coin. 1916 coin is so rare, only 52,000 of them were made, and they were all released into circulation. Some can still be found today, even on dateless quarters. I'll go over that in a future video, how to determine a 1916 versus 1917 on a dateless coin. But a 1916 in this condition would go for insane money. They're so rare. But later on in this same year, 1917, they actually covered Lady Liberty's breast with chainmail armor so that she would still fit that militarized stance that she had taken. Two big changes in the 1916 and 17 versus the Type 2 was obviously the chainmail armor to cover Lady Liberty's breast that we just discussed. And also the reverse has some stars that moved around on the back of the coin. Here is a about uncirculated condition Type 2 coin. This one is dated 1924. See if we can get it to focus, but you can see the chainmail that covers Lady Liberty's breast now. And her head is a little bit different. Her shield is a little bit different design. Same design, just tweaked a little bit. And then you can see the reverse. The major difference is the star positioning, and it's the easiest way to tell a Type 1 versus a Type 2, as you can see side by side how different they are. And even if we flip them over, you can see the head design versus the Type 1 and Type 2. The Standing Liberty design underwent a minor change in 1925, which some consider a subtype, but I refer to it as the Type 3 coin. The date area down here on this 1924, you can see it's raised up on this pedestal or the step that Liberty is standing on. So on the early dated coins, 1916 through this year, 1924, this date wore off so rapidly to the point where we see a lot of coins without dates on them, referred to as dateless coins or dateless quarters. So in order to remedy this situation, the Mint decided to recess the date into this pedestal starting in 1925. And you can see right away the massive difference that this can make with the date wearing off. So I refer to this as a Type 3 coin because it is a pretty significant change. It's minor, but significant enough to where the date stays on the coin. And you can see the difference here, how the date would not wear off as quickly when it's recessed. It's no longer a high point on the coin, so the date survives a lot more on these coins dated 1925 through the last year of 1930. There were no quarters minted in 1922. There were also no nickels, no dimes, no half dollars, and no cents were made in Philly for the first time since 1815. And that's all because the Mint was required to produce a large number of silver dollars under the Pittman Act, which basically authorized the conversion of standard silver dollars into bullion. So this put a massive strain on personnel and equipment at the three operating mints, the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco Mint. So it left very little time or machinery for anything else other than making these 1922 piece dollars. They made so many of these. These are very common, these 1922 piece dollars. If you're first starting out, or if you really like piece dollars and you want to add one to your collection, you can get the first year 1922, well, I guess I should say second year 1922, pretty cheap. So these are nice coins to acquire in pretty nice condition. When grading Standing Liberty quarters, there's a few points on the obverse that you want to focus on and carefully inspect. And those 3 points are the center of the shield, the Lady Liberty's right knee and thigh, and then the date would be the other point, mostly on the type 1s. On the reverse, you really want to look at the eagle's breast feathers, and then the left wing. As you can see, it's pretty worn down here. The breast feathers are pretty worn down as well. Those are the high points on the reverse. So on Standing Liberty quarters, there's a separate designation which is referred to as FH, which stands for full head. And these coins are much more scarcer than those without, but this classification has more to do with the quality of the strike rather than the grade. The coin design is complex, and it led to a lot of weak strikes, making the FH full head designation incredibly desirable for collectors. And this is another 1925 Standing Liberty quarter I have in my collection, and this is probably my favorite Standing Liberty quarter I have in my entire collection. And I think this coin has just enough to give it the full head designation. What this coin needs for full head designation is 3 leaves. Let's see if I can focus that in. 3 leaves in Liberty's hair must be totally visible. The hairline along Liberty's brow must be complete, and the ear indentation must be evident. So I think this coin just barely meets the criteria to give it that full head designation. This coin has some really awesome toning to it on the obverse and the reverse of the coin. Just a beautiful example on this coin here. Here's a type 1 Standing Liberty quarter, and see if I can get it to focus, which I think has just enough to give it the full head designation. It has just enough detail. You can see a clear line between Liberty's brow and the forehead. It's not super flat, and it has enough detail, so this I would classify as full head on this coin. Another point to look out for is the rivets on the shield, specifically in the bottom corner here where the shield kind of meets Liberty's torso. This often will get flattened out, indicating a weak strike. Same thing with the head, would be a little flat. So this is a pretty strongly struck coin. A lot of times with weak strikes, you'll see the shield and the rivets here where the rivets meet the torso will be very flat or just non-existent. And then Liberty's head will also be more or less non-existent or flattened out. So here's a nice example of what I was just talking about. This coin did grade MS62 by NGC. It's a 1928S, and you can see how the shield and the rivets kind of flattened out. The rivets are non-existent, and then you can see on Liberty's head how it's very flat. There's very little detail. You can make out the top of the leaves, but the brow line is completely just flattened out here. So this is a nice example of what's considered a weak strike coin. Still graded mint state though, but this is a beautiful coin. Briefly, I just want to touch on mint marks and their locations on these quarters. They are located on the obverse of the coin. On the left side of the coin, at the bottom of this row of stars here, and right to the right of the last star is where the mint mark will be located. And like many other classic US coins, the Philadelphia Mint did not stamp their coins with a mint mark, so this is a 1924 Philadelphia minted Standing Liberty quarter. And then here's an example of a Denver Mint. Back to this nice 1917, you can see the D right to the right, and that's where the mint mark is located. And then similar here with the S for San Francisco Mint. So those are the 3 mint marks that you would see on the Standing Liberty quarters. And then you also see this M just on the opposite side at the bottom of these right stars. There is an M there. And that is for the designer initial for Herman McNeil. You can see it really well on these worn coins, but that M is pretty well indented there, and there should be a star right there, but this coin is pretty well worn. But that is the mint mark and designer initial, both on the obverse of these coins. One of the key dates for the series is the first year date, 1916, with a mintage of only 52,000 pieces. Production was limited to just 2 weeks in December of 1916, but these coins were not released until 1917, when the mint released both 1916 and 1917 dated coins into circulation. But then very few people paid much attention to the new design, and unlike the introduction of some other denominations, such as the Lincoln cent in 1909, very few people noticed the mixed dates. As a result, virtually all the 1916 Standing Liberty quarters quietly entered circulation, where they remained for quite some time. Uncirculated pieces are very rare, and gem uncirculated pieces only occasionally come up for sale. Without a doubt, it's one of the one of the scarcest 20th century quarters in any grade, and this is my personal dream coin. I hope to own one of these in my collection someday, but I'll have to do some work to acquire one. And really, the only hopes I have to get one is to find a dateless 1916 to add to my collection. The rarest Standing Liberty quarter is the Type 2 issue, the famous 1918 over 7S, the overdate, created when a previous year's dies were improperly prepared, and the error was not discovered by numismatists or collectors until a number of years later, long after most of the coins had entered circulation. So this coin is rare in all grades, but extremely so with full head and any higher ranges of mint state or AU condition. Mintage figures are unknown for this variety, but obviously minuscule. It's one of the most desirable collector coins of the 20th century, and it makes it extremely challenging to complete a full set of Standing Liberty quarters without this coin in it. The 1923 S was the first quarter struck at the San Francisco Mint since 1920, and it had a low mintage of only 1.36 million pieces, making it just a bit scarcer than the 1921. And then of the later dates, the 1927 S has by far the lowest mintage with a mere 396,000 pieces, representing the second lowest figure of the series, just behind the 1916. The 1927 D is also a scarce issue with 976,000 pieces struck. This beautiful quarter was only in production for 14 years, but it was fate that it was going to suffer an early demise, as 1932 marked the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. So Congress conceived the Washington Quarter. So this was supposed to be a commemorative issue, but the public loved it so much it ended up sticking around. So the Standing Liberty Quarter run ended in 1930. No quarters were minted in 1931 due to the Great Depression, and then in 1932 the Washington Quarter was introduced to the world, and we still see this today, just not in this beautiful silver. I hope you all enjoyed this mini-series with Standing Liberty Quarters, my favorite U.S. coin to collect. It's a very challenging but very rewarding series. I do not yet have a lot of the key dates or tough dates in the higher end condition, but that's part of collection. You acquire what you can, and then you eventually upgrade over time. If you guys haven't watched part 1 of this little series, I recommend watching that now. You get a lot of really good backstory and general information about how this beautiful and historic coin came to be. I appreciate all the views and comments on my video, so please like, comment, and subscribe to see more videos like this one. And this is Steve with Rustic Moose Coins, and until next time, thank you all so much for watching.